Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episodes of The Vampire Diaries, The Originals, Sleepy Hollow, and Grimm. Starting with The Vampire Diaries, in this episode, I kind of got my answer to the question. It seems that obviously everything's going from this point on is going to take place purely, the 3-year time skip is the current time. That's the present. And we're going to get flashes back to what happened over the course of those 3 years. Like in this episode, we found out mainly it was about what Stefan and Valerie were up to. They were kind of going around the world trying to find a way to get rid of that scar on Stefan's chest. And at the same time, getting a little closer, too. Another thing that came up, which I thought was kind of interesting, because Raina brought it up to Stefan, is the fact is the scar actually connected them. All the time that she was held by the armory, she needed to kind of keep her mind busy. So the only thing to kind of keep her entertained was seeing, got to see and feel through Stefan. It's like see and what he experienced and feel what he felt. So I love how Stefan's kind of like, that's a little creepy of you, and Raina was kind of like, well, I didn't have anything better to do, so. But basically, we have Damon, initially he was like wanting Raina to transfer the scar to him. But ends up setting Stefan free, and Stefan ends up running away. And Raina kind of brings it up, like something that's Damon had never thought about, is the fact is Raina does have a human life. Even if she doesn't, someone doesn't kill her, even if she has even she stays in the best of health, she will live maybe another 60 years, because even though she has these supernatural abilities and stuff like that, she's still human at the deepest core. So if Damon takes the scar, he will die, but it'll be around the time Elena comes back, so he won't be able to spend time with Elena. Like I said, Damon never thought about that, so he starts second guessing it. So when Valerie comes to help him, get rid of Wolfsbane in the system, he kind of knocks her out, because he's not taking the scar immediately. Because basically, and Damon says it himself, he basically wanted to have everything. He wanted to have Elena, to have his brother, to get out of this messed up situation. And Valerie kind of calls him selfish and stuff like that, because Damon figured it out that Valerie knew this for the longest time about transferring this scar, but she didn't say anything to Stefan. Damon kind of is like, oh, the reason why you didn't is because you knew this whole adventure, this whole y'all being together searching for it, was the only reason why you were together, that you were scared that if he got rid of the scar, he'd go back to Caroline. And it's kind of sad, because she's like, she wanted to protect Stefan from Damon, because basically, she was like, Damon's you're nothing good for Stefan. You cause nothing but trouble in his life, and he's better off without you. He's happier without you. And it's kind of sad, because you can say Damon is selfish, but who isn't selfish? Because everyone in this series has done something selfish, every once in a while. And it's kind of sad that Damon kind of gets demonized for it. It's just like things haven't always worked out for him. Granted, it's always because things just never do. It's like when Damon tries to do something, things just end up worse. And that's not necessarily his fault. You could argue, yes, it is, because he just makes the wrong decisions. But I don't know. You even have that interesting conversation between Stefan and Raina, because Raina is like, you literally could have, when you found out that I escaped and I was on the loose again, you could have literally gone to Valerie, even Caroline, but you went to Damon. You woke Damon up. It's because, no matter what happens, you always go, Once again, it's like he was choosing his brother over anyone else all over again. Because truth be told is he's not willing to, not give up on his brother. And then there was a situation where, she's like, tell me that you give up on your brother. And he's like, okay, yes, I give up on my brother. At the same time, Valerie is trying to put the scar on Damon, but at that time, Raina stabbed Stefan and put his soul inside of the Phoenix Stone, which sucks, dude. And by the time Damon and Valerie got there, it was all over. Valerie's like, it's my fault, because basically she knew about the scar thing, but she didn't. So, but Damon's like, no, no, it's my fault. It's because, like I said earlier, like he wanted it all. He thought he could have it all. And he's like, I'll save you, brother. I'll fix this. I promise you that. Other developments, which I'm going to go back, other things that have, we found out about why, a little bit as to why Matt helped Raina. It was specifically to go after Stefan. I knew like the only reason why he had to help her was because of the whole Penny situation. We still don't know exactly what went down. Obviously, she is dead. Like I said, saw that coming. Sure, everyone else did, but it's like, because she seemed like the only motive Matt would have to, help Raina. I thought, she was killed by a vampire or something. That's why he is helping her. But specifically Stefan, but we still don't know what exactly he did. Because the last time we saw, Matt was kind of on okay terms with Stefan. Granted, he kind of kicked Stefan out of Mystic Falls, out of his home. But, they were on okay terms. So it's like, what happened? Because even Valerie hasn't said anything about that. So we had Mary Louise and Nora. Basically, they were held by the Armory that 3 years. And over the course of that time, they were experimenting on those pills. Because apparently, it was the Armory who took the plant. The plant... Wasn't it the previous episode where Stefan was trying to get the they needed that particular plant to recreate that magic block that Freya had created for him in the crossover episode when he went to New Orleans. Basically, it's a plant that's poisonous to witches, and someone, before Stefan and Valerie got there, someone took all of it. So it was the Armory. Basically, it acts as a poison, and it seems it can block magic temporarily. I guess because initially it was in a shot, because that's what Enzo had given Bonnie into her, it was in a shot form, but I guess now they've created it into a pill form, because Enzo had given it to Nora, and it kind of blocked her magic, so, which is, I guess it is only specific witch magic, because it's like, I'm surprised it doesn't affect vampirism, because, vampirism is magic too, but... Well, it is specifically, it's specifically poisonous to witches, so of course it only attacked the witch aspect to them, because they are vampires with magical ability, so it just only attacked the witch aspect. But like I said, I don't know, it'd be kind of interesting if it did attack vampirism too, but nevertheless. Basically, Alex, the head of the Armory, the one who's related to Enzo, basically is holding Mary Louise hostage. Basically, she's suffering from the poison, because they were basically testing the pills on her, and it really messed her up. And basically, it's like, Alex is like, you track down Enzo, because Enzo's the one that helped Raina escape. You do that, and we'll release Mary Louise. Nora does it, but you end up finding out it wasn't Enzo who released her. It was actually Matt who did. And even Nora, him and Nora teamed up, and Nora's like, why are you helping me? Enzo's obviously got his own reason. I figured it had something to do with Bonnie, and Alex was like, oh, tell Bonnie, how is Bonnie Bennett doing? So it's like, what happened to Bonnie? I mean, I guess we'll find out, but it's like, I knew it had to have something to do with Bonnie, because maybe she's been taking those pills or whatever to block her magic. I don't know why. Something happened, and I want to know, what happened to Bonnie. Just like I want to know what happened with that whole Matt and Stefan situation. But essentially, they ended up releasing Mary Louise, but sadly, Mary Louise is dying because of those pills, because they created this poison, but they were never able to successfully make a cure, so she's dying. Nora decides she wants to go off and spend the last little bit of her time with her. I like that idea that what Mary Louise says. She's like, Nora is driving. She's like, oh, I must really be dead already. So like, come on. And they were about to make their escape, but then Raina showed up. This is after she took out Stefan, and she throws the sword, and it nicks Nora. So this basically means Nora's going to be running for the rest of her life. Mary Louise decides that she'll protect Nora, and she'll destroy the stone. But, Nora's like, you're not going to go alone. So they both channel their magic into the sword, and they destroy the stone, killing themselves in the process. Which, as we know, Stefan's soul was inside of that. So it's like, what the hell does that mean? Where do we go from here? Is it even possible to save Stefan now? Where's his soul at now? a lot of interesting developments and a lot of questions. I like this whole time jump aspect, though. I thought it was a very interesting concept from the very beginning, but now that we're there, it's going to be interesting seeing the flashbacks to find out how we got to where we are. So now moving on to this week's episode of the originals, we have Finn returning home, obviously. Cole is super pissed about it. And from what, like, he was saying, like, oh, Finn probably came back when I was resurrected. Part of me is wondering if Freya had something to do with that, because she is super into the fact of trying to rebuild their family, because, Elijah has his reservations about it. And obviously, like I said, Cole has his, because Cole's like, basically, remember when Cole was a witch and, Finn was in Vincent's body, because I was like wondering, like trying to remember specifically when he was talking about Finn killed him, and that's when he was talking about specifically when Finn had cursed him. He wasn't even a vampire anymore. He was a witch, but just because basically that's why Cole's super pissed at him, because like he was a witch. He was happy being a witch because now that he's a vampire again, and he ends up telling Elijah that he can't control himself. The hunger, it's just too much for him to control, because in the past, unlike the others, especially Elijah learned how to control himself, but out of everyone in the family, Cole never learned how to control himself because he never cared to, which is very interesting. But you see him, he's like sad about it. He's super reluctant because he wants to change for Davina. And you kind of see that heartfelt moment, and Elijah's like, it's okay, brother. Basically, Cole kind of said, what was it? Like, basically, we always end up hurting the people that we love, even when we don't mean to. He's like, and Elijah's like, yeah, we do. Like, it's kind of Michelson curse. We also had that moment. Vincent literally had his hands on that white oak bullet for like 2 minutes before Blondie. Did we ever hear her name? The badass blonde vampire lady who showed up and beat the crap out of him, well, took the bullet from him, and basically, with a little help from Josh, Marcellus ends up why did I call him Marcellus? I mean, that is his name, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I'm so used to calling him Marcel, but initially his name was Marcellus. That's why I was like, I was being stupid. Anyway, Marcel with, Josh ends up tracking it down, and it ends up being that it's being sold on an auction to the highest bidder, the final white oak bullet. And then we have, Josh going to the meeting, and he kind of held his own against those other vampires. Granted, he still got his ass beat, but he was able to get his blood on her, which was basically the whole plan. And so it was so that they could track her. And basically, the whole auction thing was like I don't know, to me, I thought that was going to turn into something else. Maybe it eventually will, because he's the leader of the Strix. He basically said there's like a Latin line or something that basically means that the Strix will do any request. That was their payment when it was time to like make a bid for the white oak bullet that set up the whole thing. So I feel like that might come back in some shape or form. I feel like because it was not necessarily like a real bidding, because they were going to take the bullet in the first place anyway, so I'm thinking maybe that won't, maybe that was just to open the door, so maybe that won't mean anything later. Now, speaking of that, I do like the fact is that Elijah is kind of on house arrest. Like, the Strix are keeping a nice, close eye on him. He can't make any move without them being around, because, they're invested in him, because his death means their death. We have Finn, who wanted, interestingly enough, he wants to be a witch. He hasn't changed how he feels about his family. He feels that they're still monsters, but he wants to be a witch again, just kind of live his own life to be happy on his own, which I'm like, you kind of don't deserve any happiness. You kind of screwed over your family. You've spent, didn't they say, like, centuries hating what they are and basically trying in many different ways to kill them. So I was like, no, you don't deserve happiness, especially Cole. Like, I feel like out of anyone, Cole's the one that deserves to be in a which is by, just because I feel like, he caused less problems than Finn did, because Finn caused way more problems as a witch when he was inside Vincent than when Cole was inside the body of a witch. And basically, Davina sticking up for her boyfriend because he was super upset about everything. I did like that moment when, like, they were about to make out, and then Cole started, the bloodlust kind of came over him and he just dashed away. I thought that's kind of, because it shows you just how hard he is trying for Davina's sake. And then you have her basically branding Finn, and now he has no choice but to, he's stuck in that vampire body. He can't transfer to a witch's body now. I like that little tussle between him and Cole, and Cole's about to like mess Finn up, but Elijah stops him, and so Cole's like, forget this. You're going to protect that sack of crap. I don't need any of you. And he leaves with Davina. Freya's still trying to be the peacemaker, wants everything to kind of work out fine. She wants their family to come together, not fall apart. And basically at this point, Marcel had retrieved the wood oak and given it to Elijah, and Elijah was about to burn it, but Finn grabs it because Finn's like, I can't live as a vampire. Like, there needs to be an out. And basically, he kind of ends up speaking to Elijah because it never really came up, but it seems Elijah, is okay with there being an end. They're, vampires. They're the originals. So without this white oak bullet, there's no end for them. Other than the white oak, there is no way out for them. So it's to this endless life, and because the life is endless, it can be tough. So it's nice knowing that there is a way out. And Lucian decides that he's going to give the bullet to, it's like, oh, give it to a mediator, someone who's not going to try and kill you, who's going to keep it safe, and decide to give it to Freya. But this always turns out to be part of Lucian's plan, because I knew something suspicious, because Lucian just happens to pop back into town now, when the white oak comes up again, and like there's that lady ends up coming to town around the same time he does. Because I thought it was kind of interesting how he took an interest in Freya. I'm like, what about the whole Aurora situation? Turns out he's the one that the blonde girl was working for. And it seems like the ancestors, because Vincent was trying to try and do something, to find out who she was working for, but the ancestors stopped him because they want him to work with her. They want him to essentially work with Lucian. And so basically they end up taking Freya as well as the white oak. So it's like, what is Lucian's plan? I mean, you can remember this whole thing started with him, Aurora, and Tristan wanting revenge, basically for the life that the Michelsons cast on them. That time they spent running from Michael because they thought they were Elijah, Rebecca, and Klaus. So is that what this whole thing's about for him? Or does he plan on making a profit off this situation? Does he plan on still selling the white oak bullet, or is he going to make use of it himself? And on another side of this episode, we kind of have moments between Klaus and Haley, because we end up having Haley trying to help out this girl who was a wolf. She basically killed someone and it activated her curse. And, Klaus was telling Haley to kind of let it go, but Haley was, being her. She's one of the few people that doesn't deal with Klaus's BS. She's like, if she sees BS from Klaus, she'll call him out on it. She's like, we wouldn't literally be in this situation if it weren't for you. If you kind of even pretended to care for a moment, she's like, even that's too much for you. We wouldn't be in this situation. You should basically think about having a better life for our daughter because of you. Like, do you want her to grow up like you? Which, you can't. It's a lot of stuff that led Klaus to being who he is. And, he's based everything he's ever done has always been, to me, a reflection of his fear. Like, of him striving to survive because he's scared that, there's enemies at every turn of his life. There's going to be an enemy. And basically, Haley is like, don't let our daughter grow up that way. And Kyle's kind of, agrees. Like, he goes, for now on, we step forward together when it comes to raising hope. We're no longer like, I'm never going to just do what I think is right. I'm going to do what we think is right for Hope. It's the least we owe her. So I thought that's kind of nice. I feel like it's always nice when you do see that, like, more kinder side of Klaus, because it's so weird. Because he's always, it's like every time Klaus is a good guy, he always turns around and does something extremely bad. It's like with the good always comes to bad. So, but with this whole Lucian situation, it's going to be interesting to see where everything goes from here. Now moving on to this week's episode of Sleepy Hollow, where we have the team kind of splitting up. We have Abby and Crane going to the catacombs, and then we have Jenny, Joe, Sophie, as well as the newly joined Reynolds, Danny, and the not so trustworthy Pandora trying to buy time for Crane and Abby to do their thing in the catacombs. And we have basically they're trying to tap into the ley lines, kind of the magical ley lines that exist where the hidden one is on a place called Bear Mountain where he's trying to activate the sands and channel its power to make himself omnipotent. Basically, they're stabbing these poles everywhere to tap into that ley line power. And, Jenny, kind of being kind of who she is, kind of goes guns blazing and goes straight in for him. But, obviously, he knows she's coming. It's like, it's not that easy to take down someone who has the powers of a god. And, basically, to punish her, he basically takes the magic and he turns Joe, because Joe was off back at the trailer trying to give them directions because the compass Pandora had to lead them to the ley lines broke. So he went back, obviously, to get the map so they know like where exactly the ley lines were. And basically, Joe got turned back into a Wendigo, which sucks. Permanent, like what I was thinking is, it seemed like whatever the hidden one did to him was a permanent thing. Because the way he was talking about it and the way things ended made me think like there was no way to save him. Like death was the only way. Which sadly Jenny had to put him down. Super sad because the way they could cure him didn't work. Because it seems like whatever the hidden one did to him did seem permanent. And when he was dying, Joe was like, "It's okay. It had to be done. It had to be done." And he died. And it's just like Jenny's never going to not blame herself. I mean, speaking of that whole situation, I knew her dad was part of this. He was too suspicious about this whole thing. Especially, I especially knew hands down when the way he handled that whole Wendigo situation, because it's like granted he was trying to lock himself in the car and stuff like that, but it's like he handled that a little too calmly. He wasn't freaking out like most people. He wasn't screaming, "Oh my god, no!" It's like he's kind of like basically telling Joe when Joe was in Wendigo form, like, you need to stop, you need to think this through. Jenny tried talking to him, but it didn't work. And then basically he finds out that he's known this entire time. Before Abby, even before Jenny was born, he knew about the supernatural. Apparently he goes way back in the day with Corbin as well as Nevins too. Basically he told him saving Joe was because he owed Corbin. It's the least he could do for Corbin, because it seems Corbin looked after Abby and Jenny also on his behalf, because he left because it was the only way to make sure they're safe. So he has some kind of deep connection to all of this, and that's the real reason why he left their mom, because it was I don't know. It's like just how much it seems like he knows a lot of stuff, especially the whole like Crane situation too. Because she's like, "How much do you know about me, Abby, Crane?" But I'd be kind of interested to see like find out more about that situation. And I like the kind of in this episode we get a heavy like bonding between Crane and Abby, like the dynamic duo, and it's like them basically talking about, them enjoying those things at the beginning, him enjoying that donut, her enjoying the coffee, because they didn't know for sure if they were going to come back from this whole situation, going to the catacombs. I thought it was kind of sweet. And just having so much fun. And then talking about everything, how much they've lost. Abby lost Corbin, lost her mom. Crane lost his son, and he lost his wife, so... But, even though they've lost a lot of things, they've also gained a lot of stuff, too, because, they have who they have now, as well as they have each other in their lives, so. But in the catacombs, they ended up finding the special room that they were supposed to find, the Pandora sent them to find. And lo and behold, who did they find? Betsy Ross. Because apparently the Betsy Ross that, I don't think they really explained it. The Betsy Ross that came back was a fake. It's like, because basically she had sent a letter, because I was wondering like what Crane meant. She came back, but they never saw each other again. Basically, she wrote a letter to him telling him that they can't be friends anymore. But this is the real Betsy. Granted, she still thinks it's 1776. because basically, time moves differently inside the catacombs. Because Abby was in there for a couple weeks, and it was on the outside. Outside, it was like a couple weeks, but inside, it was like 10 months. So it's like she's been in there for 200 years on the outside. That must feel like forever in there. That's probably like over 10,000 years or something she was in there. So that's crazy when you actually kind of break that down like that. She was super excited to see Crane. She's like, your hair. He's like, oh yeah, it's a little shorter. She's like, it's cleaner. And it's also, I like the kind of look she kind of gave Abby, almost kind of like, who's this lady with you, Crane? That's how I interpret that look, kind of like, oh, you brought a friend, but it's also, you brought a female friend type of look. So, I don't know. I did kind of like that moment where, another thing that came up was, Pandora was going to buy them time. And I kind of like that Reynolds, Danny was kind of like, we can protect you. You don't have to do this. We'll look after you. And it's just like, how do you really stop a god? It's kind of, I thought it was kind of sweet of him trying to stop her, because it's like, you've done enough. You don't have to risk your life. It's like, Pandora's, she kind of does. She kind of owes it to you after all the crap she's done in town, which is like, I've seen previews to the next episode a little bit, so spoilers, but it's like, what is Pandora's gain from all this? Like, it seems like she does have an ulterior motive to helping them. Not, it's not just about stopping her husband. I mean, granted, it is for self-preservation because he is going to kill her too, so it's, I don't know. But, Danny brings up the fact is he's worried because he kind of figures out, because he was ordered by some, like, there at least one of his higher ups, there could be others who ordered him to keep an eye on Abby. So now that he knows the whole truth about her being a witness, as well as the whole supernatural thing, it's like he doesn't know how what's the whole connection there? Like, what does that mean? Like, for Abby, what's their plan for her? Because they refer to her as an asset. So that's why he's trying so hard to help her now, because he feels like he let her down with that situation. So he has to make it up for it. Like, if saving the world's the least he can do. And then at very, very end, we see the Hidden One channeling that energy from the sands, because they tried the barrier thing, the whole thing with the ley lines didn't work out. He ended up shutting that whole thing down in a matter of seconds, actually. And he starts channeling that energy, red energy, channeling all through him. So looking pretty, pretty scary. So next week is the season finale, so I'm quite interested to see what goes down. And now moving on to this week's episode of Grimm. I really liked the beginning. It was super adorable. We had Nick playing with Kelly. He's like, can you say daddy? Can you say mommy? Can you say Grimm? And Adeline's like, I think he's a little too young for that one. And then Adeline answers Nick's phone, and it's Eve. She's like, oh, Eve. And Eve's like, oh, hi Adeline. How are you doing? And she's like, good. I love how awkward it is. And she ends up talking to Nick, and Nick and Eve meet up. Turns out that still looking into the whole Renard situation. So it basically comes down to finding out. We know what Sean knew and when he knew it, but everyone else is trying to figure out. Eve is trying to figure out, has he been a part of this from the very beginning? Even Nick, he eventually tells Hank, but Hank's like wondering, like, trying to decide the whole thing too, because Sean ends up bringing him in and, reveal, because Nick had already knew, but, Hank didn't at the time, that he's running for mayor. So it's up to them. They're not going to act on anything or say anything until they find out whether or not he's really what he knew and when he knew it. So, and we even have Eve using that thing, the whole potion as well as the hat, to turn herself, the one where Juliet turned into Adeline, Adeline turned into Juliet, that whole thing. She's using that. I thought she was going to disguise herself as Adeline to get close to Sean. It's like, no, she's going to skip that whole part and just disguise herself as Sean to get close to Black Claw. That whole thing was weird, especially when she had Sean's body but still had her head. That looked so weird and kind of creepy. But, it's like, okay, that's how she's going to handle that situation. The main thing that went down in this episode, this week's case, was essentially a Vessin who basically kind of essentially sucks the youth out of people. Granted, it doesn't happen all at once. It's like he sucks it out of you a couple of hours later. I think it was like 48 hours later. Basically, you rapidly age and die. Basically, he was selling it to a doctor who was using the excretion he like gave. Basically he took the youth he took from you. He like excreted it as like a liquid, and basically a doctor was using it as a cream to basically make you look young again, a fountain of youth, if you would go as far as saying it, which is kind of what people are bouncing around in this episode. In which that vessel is like scary looking, just and especially the way it looks when it's sucking the youth out of your face. Essentially, he was a photographer and he got victims by being like, "Oh, I'm gonna take your photo." Basically, I guess the flashing lights or whatever. I guess his whole setup with the lights and well as his camera, it disorientates a person or something, or maybe he drugs the warder or something. But basically, essentially, he knocks them out. So, kind of felt bad for that girl at the beginning, especially her, just because it's like, oh, she wanted to be a model and just to die like that. Especially the other victim in the episode. It was really twisted because apparently the more you use it, the more it kind of messes with people's minds, because that doctor got super messed with. His mind was super messed up, especially at the end when his face was pulled back like that. Super scary. And I love how Rosalie went undercover there, and basically the doctor was examining her, and he's like, "Oh, I see why you came in." And Rosalind's like, what do you mean? You see what? He's like, all these imperfections. She kind of cut herself. What imperfection? Because it's like, calm down, Rosalie. You're beautiful. And I love when Rosalind decides, like, I knew this was going to happen. Oh, gosh. I knew this was going to happen. And just her whole reaction to it, because he's like, I can make you beautiful, like, makes you, like, extra beautiful. And Rosalie's like, I'm happy with the way I look now. And he's like, really? And you can almost see the distaste in her face. She's like, what do you mean, really? Yeah, I'm beautiful. What? Don't say that. And it's just like, it was so funny how hurt she was. And but they finally took him down. I mean, granted, the Vesson guy came, but Doctor was so out of his mind. He ended up stabbing him in the neck, and he's putting, like, the cream had fallen on the ground, and he starts scooping it off the ground, putting it on his face, trying to make himself look even younger. And he asked Rosalie, You still didn't answer my question. She's like, what question? It's like, how old do you think I am? I'm 69 years young. And the cream starts peeling his face back even more, making him younger. So I'm assuming he died from that. I don't know. We just saw him kind of hit the ground. I can only assume he died. So pretty creepy and twisted episode. Really liked it though. Want to see where this whole Renard situation goes. Like, and what Eve has planned next episode. Like I said, she's obviously going to infiltrate the Black Claw group, but I feel like it's going to turn into something else too. Some crazy stuff is going to happen. She's going to do and say some weird stuff while she's Sean, and I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting if she kind of admits to Nick and stuff like, yeah, this is actually me, Eve, underneath all of this. I kind of like how she was, basically when she called Nick in earlier in the episode, she was like, Nick is like, what do you want me to do? She's like, I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to keep tabs on it. And Nick's kind of like, okay. And she's like, okay, bye. Essentially, just kind of, and goes back to work. So it's kind of, whole weird situation. I did wonder, like, in the back of my mind, what if at the beginning, like, Adeline was a little jealous, like him going off to meet and talk with Eve. She's like, yeah, go on ahead. I got things covered here. It's like, to me, I in my brain, I wanted to be jealousy. I want her to be a little jealous. Oh, he's going back to his ex. It's like, no, like, he should be with me. I don't know. I'm reading obviously too much into it, but I like that. I don't know. I'm stupid. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.